Last week, Doha's calm was shattered by an Israeli airstrike on a luxury hotel. The target's high-ranking Hamas leaders long sheltered in Qatar under a delicate, unofficial arrangement. Qatar had acted as mediator between Hamas and the West, but this strike was a direct violation of its sovereignty. The explosion sent shockwaves across the Middle East, signaling that the old rules no longer applied. Emergency services rushed in, but the damage, both physical and political, was done. Several key Hamas figures were killed, but the fallout was catastrophic for Qatar's reputation and alliances. For years, the region relied on quiet agreements and unspoken rules. This attack tore those apart. Qatar, known for diplomacy and neutrality, suddenly became the site of a foreign military operation. The incident put Qatar's relationship with the United States under intense scrutiny. The world watched. How would Qatar respond? How would its powerful neighbors react? The strike challenged the very foundation of Gulf security, raising doubts about U.S. guarantees. If the U.S. couldn't prevent an ally from striking another ally, what were those guarantees worth? This event exposed deep cracks in the region's power structure and trust in American protection. The belief in U.S. military presence as the ultimate shield has been shaken. Now, a vacuum of trust and a moment of uncertainty have emerged. Other global powers are seeing an opportunity as the Middle East geopolitical landscape begins to shift. Just outside Doha stands Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American military installation in the Middle East. For over 2 decades, it's been the nerve center for U.S. air operations across the region. Thousands of American troops and advanced aircraft are stationed here, symbolizing the U.S.-Qatar alliance. For Qatar, hosting the base meant a powerful security guarantee, protection under the world's strongest military. This allowed Qatar to pursue an independent foreign policy, even when it frustrated its neighbors. The American presence was seen as the ultimate deterrent, until now. The Israeli strike crossed a line no one expected, putting the future of Al Udeid in question. The base was supposed to guarantee Qatar's security, but it failed to prevent an attack from a U.S. ally. For Qatari leaders, this is a fundamental breach of trust. The symbol of American power has become a symbol of its limitations. Qatar is now forced to reconsider its reliance on the U.S. for protection. If American forces can't deter threats from other allies, what is their purpose? The logic of the U.S. security architecture in the Gulf is under scrutiny. The region's faith in American protection has been deeply shaken. Qatar and its neighbors are rethinking their security strategies. The future of U.S. military presence in the Gulf is now uncertain. Qatar's response was swift and furious, condemning the violation of its sovereignty. Years of careful diplomacy and mediation were undermined in a single moment. Behind closed doors, Qatari leaders demanded answers from the U.S. How could this happen? Was Washington complicit, or simply unaware? The trust built over decades began to evaporate. For Qatar, trust in powerful partners is a necessity, not a luxury. The U.S. security guarantee, once the cornerstone of Qatar's defense, now seems unreliable. Qatar is quietly reviewing its entire defense and foreign policy doctrine. Relying solely on one superpower now appears dangerous. The search for new, more reliable partners has begun. The strike has forced Qatar to look beyond traditional alliances for its survival. The shockwaves from Doha reached Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, where leaders watched with alarm. Like Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have long depended on U.S. security guarantees. The strike forced them to confront a harsh reality. If it happened to Qatar, it could happen to them. The reliability of American promises is now in question. Gulf leaders know that U.S. self-interest may not always align with their own security. Both Saudi Arabia and the UAE have already started diversifying their alliances, building ties with China and Russia. The Doha strike has accelerated this shift. The old model, oil for U.S. security, is looking outdated. Gulf states are becoming more assertive, seeking a security framework not reliant on a single partner. The relationship with the U.S. is too deep to end overnight, but its nature is changing. The Gulf is no longer a passive client, it's becoming an independent actor. The Doha strike was a wake-up call for the entire region. The era of unquestioned American dominance is fading. Gulf leaders are preparing for a new multipolar world. The region is bracing for change. Into this uncertainty, China stepped forward with a new offer. Beijing proposed a strategic security partnership to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. China's approached partnership without preconditions, emphasizing non-interference and mutual respect. This resonates with Gulf leaders, tired of American lectures on domestic issues. China is now more than just an energy customer, it's a potential security partner. Gulf states are responding with cautious interest. seeing China as a counterweight to the US. The relationship, once focused on oil, is shifting towards security cooperation. The idea of a Chinese military presence in the Gulf is no longer unthinkable. For China, protecting its Belt and Road investments and energy supplies is key. For the Gulf, China offers stability and a new balance of power. This is a strategic masterstroke for Beijing. The Gulf's openness to China is the result of years of frustration with US policy. A China-Gulf security partnership would have profound implications for US influence. For decades, the US was the region's power broker, its military presence shaping Middle Eastern politics. The Doha strike and China's offer threaten to unravel this structure. If Gulf states align more closely with China, American influence will decline. This isn't just about prestige, it's about losing strategic assets and leverage. US bases in the Gulf could become less useful if host nations drift from Washington. China, meanwhile, secures energy, expands its Belt and Road, and challenges the US on its turf. A successful China-Gulf partnership would be a major victory for Beijing. The Middle East is moving toward a multipolar reality, with more choices and less dependence on the US. The shift won't happen overnight, but the process has begun. The Doha strike may be remembered as the catalyst for this change. The American-led order in the Middle East is under threat. The global balance of power is shifting. At the heart of this shift is energy. The Gulf's vast oil and gas reserves have long been protected by the US Navy. But the US is less dependent on Middle Eastern oil, while China's demand has soared. China is now the Gulf's biggest energy customer, making the security of these supplies a top priority. China can no longer outsource protection of its vital resources to a strategic rival. This mutual dependency is expanding from economics to security. If the US is seen as unreliable, it's logical for the Gulf to turn to China for protection. A greater Chinese role in Gulf security would directly challenge US naval dominance. Chinese and American warships could soon patrol the same waters, creating a new dynamic. Energy ties are the glue binding this new alliance. What began as oil for money is evolving into a deep strategic partnership. The security map of the Middle East is being redrawn. The consequences will be felt for generations. The Israeli strike in Doha was more than a single event. It marked a turning point. The era of unquestioned American dominance in the Middle East is ending. Power is becoming more diffuse, alliances more fluid. China's rise as a security player will reshape the region's conflicts and balance of power. The US must now compete for influence in a way it hasn't for decades. Gulf states are diversifying partnerships for their own security. China is stepping up to protect its interests. The US faces a choice: adapt to this new reality or risk being left behind. The old model of a single protector is gone. A multi-partner approach is emerging. The Middle East is entering a pivotal new era, reflecting a broader global shift. The consequences of this transition will be felt worldwide.